So for full context, and I may cover this twice, we'll see. I presented at DEF CONF US in August, and I had this wonderful talk that I love very much. It's very on brand for me. And I had a lot of people in the audience that really loved it, including Lindsay. And they came up and asked me questions afterwards, and several of them said, hey, would you be willing to share the recording with me so I could show this to my team? And I said, absolutely, I would love that. And then it turns out they never hit the record button. I assumed that they lost the recording because they told me that they lost the recording, but no, they had forgotten to hit the record button. So I need to record this again so that I can share it with teams. And Lindsay asked me to come to this call and present it. And I was like, you know, I need to record it again. Perfect kismet timing. I love that. Thank you so much. I love the opportunity to do it again. So if this recording gets messed up, it's fine. I'll have a chance to do it yet again. And I'm ready to do that at a moment's notice if anybody has a recommendation. Okay. So, yeah. Let's start us off. Delegation is a love language. A guide for managers is something that I've been working on for like 3 years because I should probably move the slide forward. Who is this guy? Who am I? My name is Jeff Ligon. I am a people manager at Red Hat, and I love being a people manager. It gives me energy in the morning. I love doing the one-on-ones. I love talking to people about how to improve their career and get them moving forward. I love making other managers like me that like managing, because I think everybody has probably had a manager in their life that did not enjoy the job very much and always seemed to be interrupted doing the things that normal managers do. And I had several of those managers, and I learned that they are not good managers, typically. You kind of want somebody that likes the job. So I've done a lot of stuff at Red Hat. I've been here 8 years. I've done the containers team, the CoreOS team, the automotive team, the edge team, and numerous other things that I've helped other teams get their stuff done. And other teams have helped me get my stuff done. So I am known as kind of a delegator and somebody who is a communicator, a social tilt, if you've ever done a tilt. And yeah, that's me. What is this guy talking about? Yeah. So,
yeah, you want to delegate the slides?
I could say next slide to you, sure.
Yeah.
Sam?
Sure.
See, he asked for delegation. Isn't that wonderful? And you two are the only people I have in the room, so we'll see how this affects the talk. So I'm here to talk about love languages. I'm going to talk about what they are, how they work, and how they don't work. I'm going to talk about careers a little bit, how to get ahead at Red Hat, as well as hopefully other companies. I'm going to talk about delegation and what it really means, not what people hate about it and not what people love about it, but like what it is. And I'm going to give some examples from people who have worked for me, who have given me this feedback on the things that worked really, really well for them and the things that didn't work so well for them. And then I'm going to ramble for a bit and just let it go and then take some questions. And that's the entire outline of my talk. Next slide, please, Sam. All right. The 5 Love Languages was a book written by an author at that URL, which I can share the slides and click on it, but you could Google it just as easily. He came up with 5 different ways that people express and receive love. And he called those the love languages. And words of affirmation are saying nice things. Words of affirmation are validating concerns. It's the conversation that really makes somebody feel connected to somebody else. Quality time is going and doing things that make memories, or just spending time with somebody that you really feel is important. Physical touch is very, very easy. I'm a physical touch guy. I like to give hugs. My wife is not so much a physical touch person, but she knows that I am. So we have that balance between us, and we know that about ourselves. Acts of service, where I go and get my wife a cup of coffee that I made every morning. She loves that, and I love doing that for her. It's a great love language for really kind of setting a routine. Receiving gifts is a fantastic love language. In my spare time, I make jewelry. My wife does not like to receive gifts. She doesn't like jewelry. So It's kind of a mismatch. It doesn't really line up, and that's okay. You don't have to match in order to express things, right? Next slide. Delegation is the love language that I feel really belongs on this list. Delegation is a wonderful, wonderful thing that allows you to show somebody that you trust them, show them that you care about their career and you want them to get ahead. And delegation is really something that I've leaned on in my career to improve other people's career. And one of the ways you get ahead as a people manager is by having people doing well underneath you. And the best way to do that is to give them the things that are going to help everybody succeed. All right, next slide. So how do love languages work? People can use all of the love languages. Nobody's going to stop you from touching somebody. Nobody's going to stop you from doing things for people. But people tend to prefer just one or two, and that's like their main, and then they can have a secondary or two secondaries. The others don't really do much for them. I was talking about my wife and jewelry. Receiving gifts is not her thing. She likes giving gifts sometimes, but it's not really her forte. She likes quality time. She likes words of affirmation. And it takes a different variation for every person to really kind of feel out what they need and what they want in order to feel and receive love. And next slide. How delegation works. So to be honest, at DevConf, we were talking about AI quite a bit, and several of the keynotes went into using AI tools to help you do your job. And one of the tools that one of the keynote speakers used was a website called Beautiful AI, where basically you enter in the abstract for a talk and it just gives you 5 to 10 slides. And this is one of those AI generated slides that talks about how delegation works. And what it spit out for us is really just kind of soul rending corpo speak that really just kind of makes you feel like, wow, they really packed a lot of those buzzwords that they expect us to use in corporate into this paragraph. But it makes sense. The words follow each other, and it's helpful. Also, down in the bottom left, I added a little diagram of how delegation works in the Objective-C language, because I know there are some nerds here, and they don't really care about the managery stuff. So I threw in a little tidbit for the nerds to geek out on some diagrams and think about code. That's the delegation model for Objective-C. Super important. I love Objective-C and Swift, but that's a little breadcrumb for some other folks. All right, next slide. How love languages don't work. Okay, so I love receiving gifts, and when I express to somebody, "Hey, it'd be great if you could give me something," that doesn't feel good. That's not how it works, right? If somebody else, like my wife, doesn't want a gift, and I just hand her a gift, that's not going to do much. It might actually cause a little bit of damage, right? Also, when somebody is expecting words of affirmation or physical touch or any number of those love languages, and they're expecting it and they don't get it, that creates this void in our soul that just kind of has an unmet need, right? And that can happen for a lot of different reasons, but when it happens in a manager-associate relationship, it can definitely lead to a little bit of hurt feelings, especially when there are expectations behind pay raises or promotions or just the wonderfulness of leading a project and successfully completing it, right? Withholding a love language on purpose is a really mean thing to do, where you know somebody is expecting this and you just intentionally say, nope, not that person. It's really rude, and it leaves baggage. And baggage is bad because you carry that baggage with you wherever you go. Next slide. How delegation doesn't work. Have you ever been in a meeting where somebody needs to take notes and you felt like, oh, I'm talking a lot, maybe this person over here can take notes for us? Or maybe somebody you don't like is in the meeting and you're like, that person is always interrupting, I can keep them busy by just telling them, hey, I need you to take notes. Or there's a positional difference where you've got a manager and an associate, and the manager just says every time they're in a meeting, hey, I need you to take notes for us. And just in a dismissive way, assign somebody a task. And that's going to leave some baggage. Delegation as punishment. If somebody has had something happen where a deadline was missed or somebody offended somebody else, and all of a sudden they get a pile of extra work that they didn't ask for because this person really feels like they should earn their mojo back or something like that. That's generally pretty bad. I don't know of any managers at Red Hat that have done that, but it's a bad move, right? It's not going to be good for the manager's career or the associate's career. And again, just baggage. Another one that I have to be very cognizant of is overuse of delegation. If you're just delegating every single thing that comes into your backlog to somebody else, you're avoiding work. You're not getting anything done. And people notice, people think, oh, I could give it to them, but they're just going to delegate it. And, I could just skip that step and delegate it myself, right? We've all worked with people that never delegate anything. I refer to them as control freaks, and they can never let anything go, and it must be perfect, and only they can make it perfect. I've worked with several of those in my team, and the number one conversation I tend to have is, listen, we need more people working on this. We need more eyes, more minds on this. And yes, it's not going to be the same as if you did it, but you have to say thank you and move forward with what we've got, because we don't have time to reinvent the entire world just in your head. And that would make you a blocker and just useless to the team. At Red Hat, we tend to hire for team players where we can. And we expect that if you're working on a team, you're going to be able to work with your team, not just take everything and just own it all, right? This is another example of delegation for Objective-C down the right across. All right, next slide. Got some examples from people who have been in my org. So these are real examples. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. Next slide. Vernon, he came to me with a problem. The stand-ups with 18 people just don't work. And I said, okay, what are you going to do about it? Damn it. Now I'm standing in front of Sam and M. Okay, perfect, right here. Right, so he gave me the feedback. This was a great way to delegate because it made him think, oh, crap, that's right. I'm a manager of a team. It's my job to take care of the team. And he came up with a plan, and I brainstormed it with him. I walked him through it. I offered to role play any of the conversations that he needed to have for it. But I told him, hey, that is a great problem that you've identified. You have to fix that. What are you going to do? And it became an opportunity for growth for him. And he felt a little bit more like the actual manager of the team that I was handing off. And that's always good. I've got another person, Tommy. I explained that there was a program being set up to create mentorship pairs in core platforms. And then I said, Tommy would be running it. And Tommy was like, what? And they used that opportunity to make themselves match up with a mentor that they really wanted. And now 2 years later, they're repeating the thing that I did with another junior manager, and the cycle continues. And Tommy got a lot of visibility in core platforms because they were the ones sending out all the emails that were doing the matching pairs. They got to talk to people who had concerns about their matchups and got to talk with the senior managers that were interested in seeing this program succeed, right? So it was a great opportunity to increase the visibility in core platforms. Next slide. Effective delegation is not about giving up control, but about empowering others and multiplying your impact. This is another one of the AI generated slides. I didn't fact check to see if Stephen Covey actually wrote that, so I just added the maybe on there. But yeah, beautiful AI, pretty good tool. It did a pretty good job of just taking my abstract and just giving me 10 slides. And some of them were very, very good. All right, next slide. Okay, how has it not worked in the past? I had a manager who was having a hard time with a lot of things going on in their area. And they came to me and listed off a problem. And I said, great, how are you going to fix that? And just like I did with the other one, right? And they were pretty depressed by that answer. They weren't looking for a solution. They weren't looking for, oh my God, what do I do next? They just wanted a shoulder to cry on and an ear to listen to them unload a little bit of the stress that they were under. And so by turning that into an assignment, that felt really bad. And that was a great example of somebody who I delegated something to that failed really, really bad. And it was great feedback to receive this feedback. So I know that that's not something that somebody wants all the time. And it's best to ask, hey, is this what you're coming to me for? Is this something you need? Or do you just want to talk a little bit? And I'm much better at it now because I failed at it, right? So next page. Another AI generated slide. Man, they found the right icons for each of the bullet points. I'm really happy with the icon choice. And like the bullets are actually really good of the things that can go wrong with delegation. Lack of oversight. Yeah, as a manager, we want to make sure that we're accountable for the work that goes out. We don't just want to just shove it over the wall and let QE or docs deal with it. We need to be able to check and make sure that things are going correctly. Miscommunication. There are tons of opportunities at Red Hat for miscommunications to occur. We have geographic differences, we have cultural differences, we have all kinds of things that can lead to a simple ask turning into a very big thing. And at Red Hat, we are very, very good at speaking up to each other and pushing back when appropriate and using good language of Agile to kind of use that pushback in a way that keeps it professional and allows us to do things. But mistakes still happen. Loss of control. If you delegate too much, people are going to question, what is it you're doing there, right? On the flip side, my mentors have always told me that once you get to the senior manager level, in order to get to director, what you really need to do is you have to make yourself redundant. You have to have the managers underneath you doing your job so that you can take more off of your boss's plate and get more done for them. And that was a magical tip that I got from Narayanan, who's a VP now, so I assume that it works. And so one of the things that I try and do in my role today is make sure that when something comes in, I have somebody working on it, but I then follow up, make sure that it's going well, and make sure that if there are any bumps in the road, I know about them so that I can protect anybody that's working on that from repercussions down the road, right? So you want to keep in touch, but sometimes loss of control is honestly good if you're trying to get the people under you promoted, right? So that's one bullet where the AI missed. I'm happy the AI can still be wrong. That's useful to me as a human with thoughts, right? Next slide. So yeah, now we've reached the end of the template because I ran out of things to add to it. So normally I would just start rambling about some of the things that worked for me. In Boston, I had the illustrious Dan Walsh in the room, and I said, Dan, what's something I delegated to you? Can you think of anything? He said, no. And that was fun for me because failure to delegate right there in the room was perfect for the talk. So Sam, I know I've delegated something to you. What have I delegated to you in the past year?
A lot of the better together things. You did a good job spreading out the task load for that to me and other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why was it a good job?
Because you created a channel for us all to continue together so that you can see our progress and we can see each other's progress and each other's toes. And you also were good about asking for updates when you weren't getting them, things like that.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, it can work with somebody that doesn't report to you too, right? So that's pretty much kind of where I'm at. And this is about the point where I open up to questions. So does anybody have any questions for us? And it doesn't have to be just me. We can throw Sam under the bus too. I heard you, Jamie.
Brian?
Yeah, this is Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Thank you, Jeff, for sharing this. This is super interesting. I guess my question is around well, the love languages seem to be both about giving and receiving, like people sort of default mode or preferred mode for both giving and receiving what they need. And the delegation thing, what do you do in an instance when someone doesn't want to like receive their default mode is not to receive delegated tasks? Like, how do you encourage them to become more that way? And then sort of along those same lines, what could like individual contributors, when interacting with managers, do to be more aware of what managers need here, what a manager's love language is in essence, so that we can, more effectively interact with our managers too. So I guess two related questions. Thank you again. This is wonderful.
Yeah, you bet. So the reason I became a manager is because I love the one-on-ones. The one-on-ones are the most effective tools. And during my talk in Boston, LBV stood up and said, during my one-on-ones, I asked a lot of these questions. And I said, hold on, let's just applause LBV, because doing the one-on-ones is the thing that really allows a manager to understand what a person wants and needs, especially if you can really get in there, get a little bit awkward, a little bit deep, and really talk about the things that are honestly plaguing you, bringing you joy, and doing the things that keep you here at Red Hat, right? A great example is the one-on-ones that I do. I generally talk about video games. I talk about what's going on in their current Jira card that they're working on. I talk about how much they hate Jira or love Jira, and I don't move to whatever side they're on. I share my experience and how I use it, and try and let them see that everything is not necessarily about story points or any other thing that is currently bothering them. But mostly it's having good, deep conversations with your boss. And if your boss is canceling your one-on-ones, you need to reschedule it, because don't let them off the hook. It is our job to do the one-on-ones on a regular basis. The reason we're doing all this quarterly connection stuff is because we found out that there were managers that hadn't talked to their reports in over a year. And quarterly connections is a great start towards weeding out those people that if you can't talk to them quarterly, then you're not getting the job done at all. And so everything that they talk about in quarterly connections on the TikTok cycle are conversations I have regularly with my reports. If I've talked to somebody 2 weeks ago, I want to check in and make sure that they're still doing the job that they want to do. And if they find something that they would rather do, I want to help them go do it. So finding out whether or not somebody doesn't like to be delegated to is absolutely one of those things that comes up in my initial conversations when I go through the onboarding spiel of, hey, how do you want me to praise you in public or in private or both? How do you want me to get you aware of a problem that needs your urgent attention? If you don't want to be pinged on Slack, I can respect that. I can deal with email. I can do Matrix. I can do text message. I prefer that we use Slack, but I'm gonna have to work with a large number of people that want to interface in a bunch of different ways. And it's my job as a manager to make them comfortable working as part of the team. It's not my job to tell them, this is how you're going to do your job and this is what you're going to do, right? So in my role, I spend a lot of quality time with another person and dig into, these are the things that are going to make them successful, and I try and do the things that are going to help them be successful. And if that's not delegation, I don't have to delegate to them. I just need them to know where their backlog is so that they know where the priority is and where it's going to fall. And if they're doing their job and it works for both of us, I love it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And then the second part was about how, like, what we can do to, as individual contributors or as non-managers, to sort of be more aware of what our managers' needs are, because I think a lot of the times we are
That
kind
comes
of
back to the one-on-one.
we are kind of blinkered, right? Because we're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are things that I'm not allowed to tell all of my reports. And I wish that full transparency was easy, but there are absolutely great reasons, HR reasons, trade secret reasons, and industry reasons why we're just not allowed to tell everyone about everything that we're doing. And that wasn't as true in Core OS as it is now in automotive, which I'm adjusting to, because anybody that has reported to me knows I default to extreme transparency. I just blab about upcoming people changes and all kinds of stuff. And there have been several times that people in my organization have found out about a reorg because I just openly talk about it. And then later on, I get a thing saying, we're allowed to communicate next week. And I'm like, whoops. And sometimes that can get me into trouble. But I mean, this is Red Hat. We generally don't send people home for messing up a miscommunication. Have you seen us trying to communicate when we make big changes? We tend to screw that up every time, right? That's on brand for Red Hat. The McKinsey survey, we didn't communicate that well, right? It was not what everybody feared, that we were looking for ways to lay people off. It was just, we were sending out a survey. And we're still dealing with the loss of trust based on that landing before we communicated it, right? But if there's one thing I know, Red Hat is probably going to screw up a communication in the future, and there's going to be an outroar, and we're going to try and manage it as best we can. But I really don't think anybody here has bad intentions for any of the stuff that we do. But to answer your direct to manager question, it is entirely the one-on-ones part of it. You got to do those one-on-ones. And if your manager isn't doing them, harass and bug and just keep putting meetings on that calendar. And if a manager doesn't have time to do the one-on-ones, then they really need a sub-manager or a direct manager to come in and help them lighten their load so that they can get those one-on-ones established. Because 95% of problems that happen anywhere in your job could have been solved if you had been doing regular one-on-ones. Not all of them, but 95%. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I wanted to chat. Lisa asked, any advice for delegating across teams or with peers?
Yes. So at the principal level is about where we start to feel like you should be able to take into account the things that you think would improve the team by bringing them work. That also extends to getting work on other teams' plate as well that you think is going to be useful because it's working for your team. So at that principal level is that kind of sharing. We're all learning how to do it. We know everybody's backlog is either completely backed up or their deadline was last week, right? So we have to tread lightly. We have to assume positive intent and all the corporate buzzspeak words that they cram into the competencies. But when it comes down to it, you have to have a really good what, why, and how of what it is you're trying to do. So if you have something for another team, you need to have a crisp ask of exactly what it is you're looking for, and then just a short why of this is the problem it's going to solve for us, so that they feel like they're answering the XYZ problem, where X is what I'm looking for, but I'm asking this other team for Z. But if you give them that XYZ explanation, then they'll know why you're asking for it. And then how you're willing to help is always the best thing to add to a request, because it tells them that you're willing to put in the time and effort to make it as easy as you can, but that this is a team situation and you're ready to extend that olive branch of, hey, I want to be part of the team and helping get solved, but I definitely need your team too. Great question, Felicia.
Thumbs up. And another question, Felicia. Any recommendations for those who love languages and acts of service? Do you have ways to monitor when your reports overwhelm themselves by accepting too many delegated tasks?
Wow. Let's see. Way to put that in the language of the talk. Yeah. So I tend to think that This conversation around delegation is the best way to get people out of being control freaks or taking on too much work. And saying, in order to get to the next level, you need to delegate more to the people you're training, the people you're mentoring, or the people that you're working with so that they can feel part of the team too. And put it in that sharing context of we're all in this together and we need everybody to be on board. And yes, we want it to be perfect, but we're going to have to accept that when we delegate things, it helps the person who's being delegated to, and it helps you, and have that conversation about what is the purpose of spreading the work around. It's not just so that we all have even backlogs, because I'm sure that the work that I would assign to M or Sam would not be equivalently handled by either of them if I were to reverse it, right? All of us have our strengths, all of us have our weaknesses, and like Sam will get through some stuff faster than M would get through, and vice versa, right? So make that pitch to the team member of, hey, I realize that it might take longer for this person to do it, but having their muscle memory get better because they've done it is absolutely essential to the team. And we don't want people who can only just do one thing on the team. We want a broad T-shaped person where they have a broad range of things that they can do, but one thing that they're really good at. And that T-shaped person is what we try and look for at Red Hat, what we try and train for. You want a little bit of ownership of a thing that you're really, really good at, but you also want to have a light dusting of all the other subjects so that you know enough to know why it might go to somebody else.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, you bet. Anybody else have questions?
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Not a question, but more a thought. I think kind of a delegation trap that I land in sometimes is just because you have the idea doesn't mean you're the best person to execute that idea. So if you have an idea or process, improvement or what have you, share that idea, share that thought with others, because there might be someone who is actually better equipped or has the bandwidth to actually go about leading, the execution of that idea. So something to think about too, especially with our principal writers in the room being kind of like team leads, right? Like you all see things at a higher level, perhaps, or like broadly across like the documentation, for example, that you're working on. But just because you see that, like that need or that update or that change doesn't mean that you're necessarily the person to take that change on. So it's kind of a delegation and sharing of ideas as well.
And also humbleness. That's not something that we can teach. That's something we just have. The humility to say, I am not the smartest person in the room. I think this is a good idea, but I might be wrong. If I share it and get some feedback, then it will get to be a better idea, right? And other people can make use of it even better than I can, right? So that's a fantastic example of wonderful humility. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending, and I appreciate you coming to my talk.